Rob on the mic, spitting truth from the heights. Queens unite under stadium lights. Bright nights, 7 train rides. Dreams born in the real hum. Brooklyn to Queens, yeah, we all about that outcome. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. From Flushing Meadows, echoes bounce off the bat. Rob calls, take the mic, snaps like a thunderclap. Home runs over bridges, no gaps in the story. Mets rise, reclaiming the glory. 7 the city, blue and orange army swarm. Summer vibe electric, love in every form. From Biggie's blocks to Flushing's heartbeat. Our anthem loud, no retreat. This our time, this our cheer. Mets talk loud, bring the hype, make it clear. From the boroughs to the field, this our year. Queens in the house, let the world hear. The apple pops in the outfield, city of dreams. Rob's voice over static, Mets on every stream. White lines mapped out the future, vividly. From shade to city, the journey's never gimmicky.
What's up, Mets fans? Welcome to Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and on X, of course, with my boy Zach on the bottom of the screen right here. And we are officially on an off day, a well-needed off day for this New York Mets bullpen, pitching staff, just mental health in general for our New York Mets. Zach, how you doing, buddy?
I'm doing good. It was a really nice homestand that the Mets had, on what turned out to be a really nice 4th of July weekend too. So just good to see this team bounce back after what was a rough second half of June there, and really get it together, play some good complete baseball. And not only that, they did it against some good teams. A Brewers team that has been really hot of late. The Yankees, while struggling, they're also a very good team. Whatever their record might say, that doesn't really tell the whole story. So it's good to see that heading into what should be at least one easier series against the Orioles in this road stand before the All-Star break, if not 2, with us going to Kansas City against the Royals to finish it up.
Yeah, coming off that lovely Pittsburgh series that we all witnessed together, and that embarrassment of a performance in that 3-game series in Pittsburgh, It was nice to see them bounce back. And the offense, and the reason why the Mets got so excited as Met fans about this homestand, and on the verge at the moment, at the time of almost sweeping the Yankees going into yesterday's game, it was that the offense finally took over a series, right? They finally took over the series against Milwaukee. They did it against the Yankees, and that was what got Met fans excited. Because I think if we would have won games 2-1, 3-2 in most of the games in this series, we would have been like, all right, great, we started winning again, which is nice, which is obviously the most important thing. But if it would have been a low-scoring games, and we would be like, oh, the offense is still struggling. They were 2 for 10 with runners in scoring position, but they played a lot better offensively, and we hope that gets going. And finally, we see this team and this core of guys from Nimmo, Alonso, Lindor, Soto, McNeil finally play offensively together in a couple of series in a row. And that is a great sign for our Mets going into this road trip against Baltimore and Kansas City.
100%. We hope we can get this, keep the offense going, and it's good to see Nimmo really coming into his own lately. He has been playing much better baseball, some really great baseball since moving into the 2-hole, but he really took over these 2 series. I mean, he had 2 grand slams, one against the Brewers and one against the Yankees. So he's really leading the charge, doing it wherever needed in the 1-hole, the 2-hole, now the 5-hole the past couple of games, with Marte leading off. And Marte, too, had himself a really nice series against the Yankees. Hopefully, I didn't see anything personally of his in relation to his knee, if he's going to be seriously injured or if he's going to be okay. I think he said he thinks things will be okay, but I don't think there's any official word. So it's good to see him getting it done, too, because that's just an extra bat that we really need before some reinforcements come in, mostly pitching, but Jesse Winker will be here shortly. And then just hoping the bottom of the order can get it put together. We had some nice at bats by Beatty and Mauricio over the series, but nothing from Vientos, which is quite disappointing. And hopefully he can get it going, because I know he was dealing with like an abdomen injury earlier in the season, so he could still be feeling the effects of that. But no excuses. If he's hurt, there's no reason for the Mets to continue putting him out there. There's no reason for him not to say anything. So I think the Mets are going to have to find a way to piece together, that third and second base situation, because I think at this point in time, McNeil should be the everyday center fielder. So just figure it out how you can piece together between Beatty, Mauricio, Vientos, whoever's healthy, whoever's hitting, whoever's hot, will play in those two positions. And then from there, just hopefully Alvarez can replicate what he's doing down AAA, because he's looked good down there so far. I think with 4 home runs.
Yeah, exactly. There's still obviously problems. Obviously, Vientos is a major problem. He was supposed to be, a part of this, core guys that, had the lineup being, having so much depth and being a deep lineup, and it's kind of been not even close to that. Unfortunately, when it comes to Vientos being, I don't even know what's wrong with him. You talked about, is it the injury still? Is it something else? I don't know. Is it mental? Who knows? But we do know that they're clearly pitching to him much differently than they did last year. They were challenging him with fastballs most of the year since he took the job over from Beatty, and they never adjusted, to more breaking balls like they are this year. And it usually takes a full year for a lot of teams to get the book on him and then, pitch differently to a hitter. And you see it, he has not adjusted. If it's injury, he needs to go on the IL and stop taking up a roster spot, but he needs to adjust. And like, the only way you stay in the major leagues if you adjust consistently with whatever the other team's doing against you, either if you're the pitcher or you're the hitter. And that's how you just stay in the major leagues. And I don't know if Vientos is going to be a guy that's going to stay in the major leagues. Is he going to be a guy that the Mets think about trading, in a package, if possible? Honestly, I don't know what they're going to do at third base. I know a lot of people are talking about, Mauricio should get the job, and he's looked good over the last couple of games, which is nice to see. But we also heard rumors that the possibility of him might be in a trade to Pittsburgh for Mitch Keller. I know that's kind of very different or out there type of situation, but it wasn't from a Met reporter. It was from a Pittsburgh beat reporter, which is always interesting, because when you hear from another organization that is not going anywhere and they put something out there like that, you do wonder if how legit that rumor is when it comes to all of that. And you just see that obviously the Mets clearly want more pitching, and obviously it's needed. Like, even if Minaya comes back, even if Sanger comes back, you stock that rotation that Stearns is still trying to get to a 6-man rotation. And, Mitch Keller will obviously help that situation to go to that 6-man rotation. They can finally do it with it, I guess, well over the 100-game mark as they were trying to do it all season. But we'll see what comes of that, in the next couple of weeks. But yeah, I agree with you with McNeil in center field. I know McNeil isn't, Tyrone Taylor defensively, but when you have a complete zero at the plate in Tyrone Taylor, and it sucks because we all like Tyrone Taylor, right? He's a guy that, always hustles, always does the job. Whatever's asked of him, he does. He's just not a starting center fielder for a team that is a contender for a World Series. He's just not. He was brought here to be a 4th outfielder. That is his best, I guess, attribute for this team, is a 4th outfielder, because of the fact that he can play all 3 outfield positions if needed. He can come off the bench, because he has been clutch for this team over the year and a half that we had him. And maybe you'll take a chance on him in a pinch appearance in a big spot late in game if it's a righty-lefty matchup or whatever it might be. And obviously a defensive replacement late in the game, which is always so useful, as the Mets used Acuna a lot of times for defensive replacements to get better defense on the field. So overall, it's going to be very interesting what Stearns wants to do and what can he do. Again, I'm not very confident that David Stearns is going to make that one big move necessary to fill up a hole that this team needs. I don't believe it at all. I don't think Mitch Keller is considered a big move. I think that's kind of I would say that's probably about a B plus move, not an A move by any means. It would be a solid move because you get another guy that's a guy that's probably a number 3 at his best. He's a number 2, but he would obviously help clearly. And we'll get into that a little later in the show when it comes to what are you willing to give up to get what we need. And obviously this team needs a lot. We need bullpen. We need probably another bat. And obviously, we're probably going to need a starting pitcher, maybe even 2, depending on if these guys. And this is why it's important, Zach, that Manaea and Kodai Senga come back this week. Like, it's so important because we got to see if they're healthy. I know they're only going to have one start prior to the All-Star break, but it gives us an opportunity to see if these guys can remain healthy for the remainder of the season, because that's going to be a big decision for David Stearns.
Yeah, go out there, pitch 4 or 5 innings for us, some solid baseball going into this break, and we'll take it from there. I disagree partly, well, mostly with what you said about Stearns not making the big move and Mitch Keller. I think Mitch Keller, while maybe not the big name that a lot of Mets fans might want, but it's all relative because what starting pitchers are really out there? What teams are truly sellers? I mean, looking at these standings right here in the NL East, the Braves aren't really selling. They might be sellers of like Marcell Ozuna, Jurickson Profar, guys like that. Maybe Ozzy Albies will see himself move, but he's been terrible, so they're not going to be true sellers. The Marlins, like they're 8 games below 500, but they've been playing some good baseball, and this is a team that I don't really see selling. I actually see them buying because they have some salary cap restraints where they can't sell. They actually need to take on like $30 million more in salary cap to not face fines. So that's a team that I don't really see selling. They're going to probably be buying some veterans and maybe trying to ship off some guys that don't fit on the team. And I mean, really looking around the league, you got the Rockies, you have the White Sox. That's about it. The Rockies, White Sox, Pirates, and Nationals are the only 4 teams that I think are truly selling at this point. I think some other teams are going to join the fold. And it's just a matter of who's actually available because I don't really see much starting pitching out there. And Mitch Keller is a move that's not going to cost you a ton. He's a guy that's been a really good pitcher at times in this league, and he's under contract for a few years. So he's someone that we could just kind of take on his contract, not give up much, and try to focus ourselves elsewhere. Because I think getting ourselves one big bat is the true need of this team, because if all else fails and you go out there and you get, say, Mitch Keller, you go and get a B reliever, a C reliever, you know what the Mets can do? They can go ahead and move Clay Holmes to the bullpen. You tell them it's not a demotion. You need to limit your innings. You've been good in the bullpen before, and that's where you can succeed. And then you go out and get the true big bat that we need at third base, at second base, wherever it is, and move McNeil into center field. And that really just solves your issues, because then you have your lineup really doesn't have any big holes. The only big hole is the catcher position, which 90% of teams have. Not many teams have a great catcher. And if Alvarez gets hot, he's a great hitting catcher. So I think this is a team that can truly they really only need one or two players. I think they could use a couple more just for pitching depth, because you see the Mets, while maybe not having amazing pitching, they had like 9 or 10 starting pitchers come the beginning of the season, and that went like that. We're down to a point where we're throwing bullpen games out there after having 4 guys able to go if people got injured in our starting rotation, and that happened. So it should be interesting to see what the Mets do. And I think I saw out there Zach Gallen is a name that's being thrown out there, Sandy Alcantara. These are guys that are not playing well this year. Like I don't want to like just shut anyone down, but we cannot be going for guys that are not playing well at this point in time. If we're going to go and try to do a reclamation project middle of the season, what are we doing? That's something you try to work out in the off season, and you take it from there. We need to find guys that are pitching well and just maybe in a bad situation, like a Mitch Keller, like Seth Lugo, someone like that. So there's a lot of options out there for the Mets. It might not be the home run type, but it's definitely going to be some necessary stability for this rotation, and hopefully the lineup too.
Yeah, I like the fact that you talk about Clay Holmes going to the bullpen, because I always thought that was going to be the case. I thought they would always try out Clay Holmes, and not that Clay Holmes has been bad as a starter. He hasn't been. I mean, most teams would take, Clay Holmes as a number 4 starter in their rotation, but the Mets had to rely on him being, top 3 in this rotation, and this is not sustainable. I don't believe that at all, and it's not the worst thing in the world throwing Clay Holmes in the bullpen. I'm not saying put him in, the 8th or 9th inning or anything like that, but you can definitely be a 6, 7 inning guy, get some, quality, batters out, and I think that would just help your bullpen. And I agree with you. Again, I'm not the biggest fan of Mitch Keller, but I'm not going to complain if you get Mitch Keller. I mean, you could do a lot worse. You could make a Blackburn type of trade again, and that would piss off a lot of Met fans. So, I know Mitch Keller would actually pitch in the playoffs, which is my biggest concern, right? My biggest concern is how are we going to get better in the playoffs? That's what, because we're going to be a playoff team. I think we all believe that. Right. If you don't believe that, then, that's on you. But, most of us believe that as Met fans that we're going to make the playoffs. So the idea is not to, let's get better to make the playoffs. Is, okay, how do we be the better team or get everything we can to be better and be productive in the playoffs? Because that's the idea here. And Mitch Keller will definitely pitch in the playoffs. So that's what I care about. Will he pitch well, knowing that does he have postseason experience? Maybe a little bit, not a lot. So there's not really any, stats or career stats to say, okay, this is what he did in the playoffs. But we know he's a solid pitcher, and that can really, be dividends to when it comes to the playoffs. And same thing with the bat. Like, I don't know where the Mets are going to go here. About a month ago, everybody was talking about Mullins and Luis Robert and Duran.
Suarez.
Well, yeah, I don't think they're going to get a third baseman. I think they'd probably rather get a center fielder than anything else. But I
think there's no real center fielders available. I mean, Cedric Mullins. I mean, maybe you could play someone out of position in center field and sacrifice defense, which I don't think is a smart move. I think Jeff McNeil, I guess he is technically out of position, but he plays a serviceable center field. I like him there, and I think there's more options on the infield. I mean, there's what's it called? Alex Bregman may be available. Eugenio Suarez. There's other names out there too. I just can't think off the top of my head. But there's people. I think I can't think of his name, but there's availability. Or even a second baseman and move Beatty to third base, because I think at this moment in time, I would be playing Beatty over Vientos. Yeah. At least until Vientos starts hitting.
Well, that's the thing, right? Like, I don't want Luis Robert. I don't care how cheap he might be. And,
that's an off-season move.
Yeah, it's a reclamation project where you got to fix him and, work on that mental situation with him, because I think it's more mental than talent at that point. And again, the White Sox are a minor league club at this point, and it's not easy coming to the ballpark playing like that every day. And not saying that he's playing bad based on that, but again, that's a big risk, because you need him to be important to this team, and you can't have him come in here and be a problem. And I don't know if the Red Sox, because the Red Sox are only a couple of games out of a playoff spot. I doubt they're going to trade Duran. I mean, their fan base is already killing the organization as it is. I don't think they're trading Duran. And Cedric Mullins is taking a huge step back. Now, don't get me wrong. If you can get Mullins for a decent price, maybe I'll take it out. A decent package. I would take it out, because I think he's a free agent, if I'm not mistaken. So I would take a chance on him. He can't be worse than Tyron Taylor when it comes to the bat, right? You might have to sacrifice a little bit of defense for offense. It just depends on what the Mets are trying to do here, right? They've been sacrificing defense. Like when you put Jeff McNeil in center field, when you start Vientos, who is never really good third baseman, at third base, you're kind of, you just got Juan Soto in right field. He's not a very good right field. He's okay, but he's not great. I mean, you're sacrificing defense for your offense. So, and the only thing I don't like about that, even though Cedric Mullins is a solid, I don't think he's better than Taylor, or he's better than Jeff McNeil. So I would just, hopefully you would hope that Cedric Mullins on a better team would, get better just based on being on a better team. And you hope that's the case, because a lot of the times you'll get a lot of guys on the trade market that has good seasons, and guys just want to get rid of contracts or has an expiring contract. But there is the occasion where, like you'll get a guy where he sucked most of the year. Some team's going to get him because the price is low, and he becomes, a Tommy Edman type, you know what I'm saying? So a lot of things can happen in that aspect of the trade deadline. But overall, there's a couple of weeks until that, right? We got 6 more games until the All-Star break, right? We would be just under the 100-game mark.
Yeah.
So that means we're going to be about 64, 65 games left of the season when the All-Star break comes, and the All-Star break can't come soon enough, in my opinion. But it is nice that going into this Orioles series in Baltimore, that we actually get pitchers we heard of that are going to be starting games for the New York Mets. We got Clay Holmes, we got Peterson, and in all likelihood, even though it says TBD in game 3, it looks like it's going to be Senga. And if
Senga
it is, right, yeah, right. Oh, say that again. I'm sorry.
As Senga in the Orioles series, and Manaea would start the Royals series.
I think that was the projection,
That was
because I
the
think
plan.
Manaea is having one more rehab start and Kodai Senga is having none. And he pitched a couple of days ago, so
Yeah, I
would
think
be
he
on
pitched 2 days ago.
Yeah, who, Senga?
Senga, yeah.
Yeah, and I think that in game 3 it's like his 6th day, and that's where the Mets clearly want him, pitching on a 6th day. So I think that's what it is. So I think it's 6 days. Oh, because today's an off day. So yeah, I think it's 6. He'll be pitching on the 6th day. So that's exactly how they've been doing it all season with him. So it sets up perfectly. And Manaea, I think, pitches 2 days from now or 1 day from now.
I'm looking into it right now. I don't really see anything definitive on whether he's starting or not.
Yeah, I think they wanted. Who was it? Was it Puma? No, was it Martino, or was it? It was one of the Mets beat guys that talked about that they would, if everything goes fine and Senga feels good over the next couple of days, he should be pitching in the last game of the series against the Orioles, and then at some point Manaea is going to pitch in Kansas City. I don't know what game.
He would probably have to pitch tomorrow night to be available for the Royals series. He would have to.
Okay, that would make sense though. Yeah,
Manaea,
I know he's supposed to start one of these games in his last rehab start.
Yeah, because I think what is it? They play 3 in Baltimore and then the day off in the Royals, or is it no days off? They might have another
question. I don't remember.
No, it's no days off.
Let me see. The damn app will load. That would be nice.
Yeah, I guess the earliest he'd be able to start would be 1, 2, 3, 4. The earliest he'd be able to start would be Sunday if he pitches tomorrow night.
Yeah, so it would be the last game before the All-Star break. So that's what I'm assuming that they're trying to do. And then, if you look at it, I think that's a perfect setup. If he does pitch on that last game on Sunday, it would be 1, 2, 3, 4. He could actually pitch coming out of the All-Star break at home against Cincinnati, if that's the case. So that kind of works out. I guess that's hopefully that it works out. If Manaea comes out healthy after him pitching his rehab start, and hopefully Kodai Senga.
So hopefully we can get them back soon, and then they can focus their attention to where else they're going to build up some depth. You really need to at this point. I mean, Paul Blackburn at this point is just a nothing. He's a break glass in case of emergency kind of pitcher. Trying to think of who else. That's basically it. I mean, Tyler McGill may be back soon, and then are we missing any other starting pitchers? Griffin Canning. Griffin Canning's done for the year. So
he's done. Yeah, I think that's it.
So that's it now at this point. I mean, other than that, it's just kind of bullpen games or even calling up some of the kids. So the Mets have a lot of decisions to make on what they're going to do with this roster, because I think they can go many different ways, and it should be interesting, because I don't think there's one formula that just fits it, because you have the positional versatility of guys like McNeil, Beatty, Mauricio, where they can move around, where we don't have to key in, we need a third baseman because, we don't have a third baseman. No, you can get a second baseman, move McNeil to center, Beatty to third. You can get a third baseman, keep McNeil in center, Beatty at second. You can get a center fielder, keep McNeil at second, Beatty and Viento split third. So there's a lot of options there that's available to them. And then same goes for the rotation, because Clay Holmes can be moved back to the bullpen. I think that might be the best case scenario for him and the Mets team, because then they don't have to go out and they don't have to worry about going out and trying to put all their eggs in a basket trying to get the A guy. They can go get someone that they like, could be a good piece to the bullpen, just to kind of be another arm you can rely on, but doesn't have to be someone you need to throw in late innings, because I would trust Clay Holmes with that, and I think most Mets fans would. The only thing I'd say is I'd like to get another lefty, so we have a middle relief lefty, whereas Brooks Riley can be your late inning lefty. So the Mets have a lot of ways they can play around with this, and God forbid of injury, Clay Holmes, you're coming right back into the starting rotation, like it was nothing. So the Mets have options. They need to get creative with it. And I know a lot of people are, I think David Stearns is going to be shopping at the bottom of the barrel, but we've also never seen David Stearns be a GM for not only a contending team, but a contending team with money. He has Steve Cohen's checkbook backing him up because last year was a weird one. I mean, he couldn't really buy, he couldn't really sell, so he kind of light bought just to appease fans, appease Steve Cohen probably. And you know what? It worked out, and the Mets made it to the NLCS. Now we have a team that's right there in the thick of it. They've proven that they're a great team. They're one of the best teams in the Major League Baseball. It's just a matter of staying consistent and how can you improve it. And you're going to have to make a big move or two to improve it. And that doesn't mean selling the farm. That means, go buy some guys that are either have a lot of money on their deal and you can eat all the money, or guys on expiring contracts where you don't really have to give up a ton of stuff. And if you do have to give up one or two big prospects to get it done, go do it, because you have a lot of guys in similar positions that, we just can't keep. We have 4 infield prospects that are all MLB ready: Acuna, Mauricio Vientos, and Beatty. We have other guys behind them: Jeff Williams, even guys that are further down the system: Jesus Baez, Marco Vargas, Colin Houck, Boston Barrow. There's loads of guys that can fill these holes. So go get what's gonna improve this team now and support this cast and lengthen out this lineup, because we saw what happens when you can produce from pretty much top to bottom against the Yankees. And if you can shape up that bottom of that lineup to really do that consistently, I mean, the Mets are going to be a force. They already are a force. They're going to be even more of one. So.
Yeah, exactly. And it's interesting because, I do wonder with the Clay Holmes situation. I do agree with you with that. I do wonder if they're gonna if the Mitch Keller comes back and Minaya comes back and Senga comes back. Let's say the Mitch Keller thing happens around during the All-Star break or something like that. You kind of have your rotation kind of set, even if you want to throw Clay Holmes into the bullpen. And I think they're not going to mess around with Clay Holmes until probably after the trade deadline. So until they actually see what they get. Because, I mean, if you don't get the bullpen arms necessary, then, you probably have to throw Clay Holmes in that bullpen. But if they do go out there and get, say, a high leverage reliever and, Brooks Raley comes back, and that'll be a lefty in the bullpen, maybe we have, less of a reason to put Clay Holmes in the bullpen, even though I'd rather do that, to be quite honest with you. If you need a high leverage reliever and they're too expensive to get, just throw Clay Holmes in there. And you get an extra addition with Brooks Raley coming back very shortly. I think it's a perfect scenario where the Mets have options at that point. I mean, this all relies on the Mets getting another starting pitcher, because regardless if it's Mitch Keller, Alcantara, Gallen, name your pitcher that's, a really solid to, really good starting pitcher. If the Mets don't, I think we all agree they need another starting pitcher, in my opinion. Either to replace Clay Holmes in this rotation or just make the rotation better. I think it's going to be very interesting to see. This is the crazy thing. The Stearns can go in so many different ways. If he's focused on getting another bat, and that's the biggest addition of this trade deadline, fine. But you got to supplement your bullpen and your rotation with other players as well. I think he's going to make 2 or 3 moves. And I think one of them is going to be a big move, Zach. I think it's truly going to be one big move. Whichever move that is, I'd be okay with. Pick one and make us happy.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think there'll be more than one big move. I think he's gonna need to make 2 big moves just because of the way this team's positioned. I think there's a lot of guys out there that kind of fit the bill for him. There's going to be pitchers available on longer term deals where they're younger and you wouldn't mind going out and getting them. I think there's pitchers that are older that are available on expiring contracts that are out there. And I think there's teams that are going to be finding their way out of this, out of the playoff race sooner rather than later. I think there are going to be some teams that do decide to stick around and see what they can do. But I think there's going to be teams that try to bow out early and make their trade pieces more of a hot commodity. And I think the Diamondbacks are going to be one of those teams. They have 2 expiring contracts in Merrill Kelly and Eugenio Suarez. I think Eugenio Suarez is the bigger get. I think you'll see a lot more hype around him. There's going to be a lot more teams willing to go out and get him. I think if the Mets can make an offer to the Diamondbacks on those two guys sooner rather than later, I think try to offer them something they can't refuse and get a deal done, because I think those two players will put the Mets over the top. I mean, you'd have a one through 6 or 7 that is really kind of unmatched, and then from there you have, I guess, somewhat of a question mark in Brett Beatty, Vientos, Mauricio, one of those three, and then Alvarez, I guess, is who would probably end up being catcher. I think he'll, after the All-Star break, he'll be back up here. And those are guys all with immense potential. It's just a matter of if they can actually put together. If they can, I mean, you have a 1 through 9 that there's no breaks, especially when they're all on. So, and then adding someone like a Merrill Kelly, who just a stabilizing force. He's been in the league for, what is it now, 7 years, and he's been someone that, aside from the COVID last year, he was injured, but aside from last year, has been someone that started pretty much every game, in every season. So he could be someone that can be out there and give us 5-6 innings a night whenever he goes out there, and be someone that could slide into the back end of that rotation come the postseason. So I think that's also got to be in your mind. And then from there, just kind of smaller pieces to add depth and kind of bolster up this bullpen, which is, I think, really showed some guts this weekend against the Yankees and in the Brewers series, but is severely exhausted. They're exhausted, and I guess the depth is kind of wearing thin a bit too, with Budo going on the IL. I guess just until the All-Star break, is some sort of illness, or they wouldn't reveal what it was, but it was something that he won't be out too long. So they need to find ways to just increase the depth. It doesn't need to be big moves. Just get bodies there that you can trust somewhat, that are in AAA, that you got to call up in case of emergency. Guys miss time because of injury, family emergencies, whatever. You need them there.
Yeah, exactly. And this team was mostly configured to be a high offensive caliber team and a very good bullpen. And the rotation kind of, I would say, average to a little above average. That was the idea behind this roster going into the 2025 season. And it's kind of been, 2 months of great pitching, and then, the pitching falling apart. And obviously that's why we had those 3.5 weeks of terrible baseball, because the offense hasn't done anything all year except until these last 2 series that we just that we're going to talk about just now.
Mm-hmm.
But it is going to be interesting, what's going to happen. But people are in the comments are talking about the Guardians, who are just falling apart right now, are talking about shopping, or at least there's rumored to shop Ramirez, obviously third baseman. Obviously, that's a situation where, again, he's well under control for many, many more years. And I think that's what Stearns is going to try to do. It's either going to be an expiring contract he picks up, or somebody who is very much under control. That's why you're talking about Mitch Keller. That's why, there has been conversations about Duran, about the Red Sox, because Stearns likes guys that he don't mind giving up prospects, knowing that there's potential to have these guys long term, or at least in the next couple of years. And that seems like his MO, at least only the first year that we've seen him. What he likes to do is have guys under contract when he trades for them, or at least an expiring contract. So it's going to be interesting. But if you can get Ramirez, I don't know how you do it. Like, I don't know how much he's going to cost package wise, prospect wise, because you're taking on that contract most likely, I would think.
Oh yeah,
and
definitely got to take on.
That would be a slam dunk. Like, that's a really good bat in this lineup. It's in the middle of the order. He's pretty good defensively. No, he's not great, but he's pretty damn good. He's better than Vientos, probably better than Beatty. And now we're talking. And maybe you can go still get Mitch Keller, and we're really talking about a team that you can get a decent bullpen arm, and that's a hell of a trade deadline. Probably the best trade deadline since Yoenis Cespedes trade, to be quite honest with you. That would be nice. Now, I know this is a pipe dream probably, but you know what? If Stearns is doing his job properly, there's no reason why he can't talk to the Cleveland Guardians about Jose Ramirez and see what happens. You just so many times, and we see this all the time, they were talking about it. The only big trade in Jose Ramirez would be a big trade for any team, for that matter. But blockbuster deals that sends a star to another team and a ton of prospects go back In this case, obviously with Jose Ramirez, it probably won't be the case of a ton of prospects. But the Juan Soto deal, the Nationals got a ton back, and all these guys are playing for the Washington Nationals. What do you got? 3 or 4 guys that are actually on this team right now for the Nationals. Most of the time, the prospect package usually doesn't pan out. Most of the time, unlike the Soto trade that the Washington got back, which was a great trade for the Nationals, knowing they weren't going to sign him. So, in my opinion, look, I know Stearns doesn't want to trade pitching prospects. That's kind of like trying to hold on to them for dear life, because when you're not going to sign guys long term on the pitching market, you're going to have to hope for these guys to be, top 3 starters in your rotation. Hopefully, at least 1 or 2 of them, not all of them, but at least 1 or 2, because you're going to depend on them, and you don't want to trade them. But you got a lot of position plays. We talked about the logjam at third and second base. Like, you got too many of those guys. They can't even play when they're on the roster every day, because you got to play guys, and somebody's going to sit. And I think you got to use them. Use your assets wisely at this point. Clifford, Gilbert, I think the Mets are going to sign Alonso to a long-term deal. So, the guys like Clifford, who is probably going to be a first baseman, you don't really have room for him in the outfield. That's a guy that can be on the market. Gilbert was supposed to be, our future center fielder, so to speak, but he hasn't played well in the minors since coming back from the injury last year. You just wonder.
Right there.
Yeah,
Jet
exactly.
Williams too.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think other than the pitching prospects, I think David Stearns is willing to trade any one of these position players for our top prospects. And if he's willing to do it, then we can get whatever we want on the market, in my opinion, Zach.
Mm-hmm. No, yeah. And then, not only that, like we said, Mauricio, Beatty, Vientos, Acuna. Can't keep them all. Vientos is the only one that doesn't really have the positional versatility. Acuna can probably play a little bit of outfield. He could play second, short, third. And Beatty has proven to be a great glove at second and third base. And Mauricio, I think he's still somewhat of a darling of the Mets organization. They just love him. So I would be shocked if all 4 of them are here, and I would honestly be shocked if more than 2 of them are here. I really do think 2 of them are going to be gone. And I got to think, sadly enough, one of them is going to be Acuna, because he's down there in AAA for a reason. I think that's so his value appears higher than it actually is. His stats are being boosted up down there in AAA, and he's played well. So good for him, and good for us. Hopefully, if we can get some good value for him. And then, guys like Mauricio, Beatty. Vientos right now is one of the ones he probably his value has tanked a ton, but I think there's still something there. He proved to do it last year, for 2/3 of the season and in the playoffs. So that's it's going to be interesting to see what Stearns decides to do, because at a certain point, if you're not trading these guys, you're going to just be letting them go for nothing. So,
yep.
No better time than any right now, and it doesn't have to just be shipping these guys off for nothing. Be strategic about it, and then we have the ability to train the off season too. If any deal arises like Alcantara. I think everyone, his name's been talked about coming to the Mets for years, Sandy, but he might be better suited for the Mets to trade in the off season, because he's someone has not bounced back well from that Tommy John surgery. So there's a lot of options out there. There really is. The Mets have a lot of pieces to trade. They've done a nice job of stockpiling some prospects deep in the system that look good. Some prospects that are kind of, a year or 2 away. Some guys that are either ready or even at the major league level that are tradable. So they have a nice stockpile of prospects that they can kind of use to supplement some trades, and also be able to keep the ones that they really want and really see fitting here on this team. So it should be interesting. It's going to be an interesting couple of weeks, because what is it? 3 weeks until the trade deadline. It's the last day of July. So we have a week off coming up, and then 2 weeks of finding out who's actually in it and who's not. So
yep,
it'll be fun.
Yeah, definitely.
It's always a fun time.
It's always better to be buyers than sellers as fans, because when you sell, you kind of lose pieces that most fans like, and it sucks. They did this in 2023 where people were pissed off at that, but it's nice to be buyers. But I see people in the chat, and X and T is one of them in the chat, and thank you for the chat in the comments. But the fact that you don't want to trade Acuna is the problem with a lot of Mets fans, right? I've talked about this for years. You have one of the best teams in baseball. You need to get better at certain positions. Luisangel Acuna, all he did for this team as a top prospect was a glorified base runner, pinch runner, and a glorified defensive replacement. That's what he was. And again, that's on the Mets for making him that, but that's what he was. He wasn't good enough with the bat to warrant staying up here. He wasn't getting the at-bats because Beatty was outperforming him. And Acuna did get the second base job. We don't forget, Acuna won the second base job. He lost it in about a week and a half. Like, that's the problem. Like, I'm not saying that Acuna's not going to be a really good talent. I don't think he's going to be as big as some people think he's going to be. I think he's going to be a solid player. But with his speed, needs to be better average, better on base. That is lacking from Luisangel Acuna. The Mets don't have time right now to worry about development of Luisangel Acuna if you need him in a trade to get somebody that can impact this team this year and possibly in the future, right? Because, look, again, at the end of the day, you got to make a decision on these guys. They're either going to help your big club. All these guys are major league ready, so to speak, right? I think Acuna probably needs a little bit more development in the hitting department because he needs a better, your speed is pointless if you're going to play every day if you don't get on base. And that was his problem. It wasn't his defense. It wasn't his pinch run. And then, yes, he helped us. But you know what? A lot of guys have helped us that nobody wants on this team that might have came up for a week, or, guys that are not on this team anymore that did help us early on in the season, right? Nobody cared about Beatty, right? Everybody wanted to get rid of Beatty, send him back down to the minors. He has been a big part of this as well, right? You can't keep all these guys. You got to use these guys as assets. There is no reason why other teams that we're competing for a championship for, the Dodgers, the Phillies, the Padres, the Cubs, go on and on and on with contenders in Major League Baseball, that they are going to trade to get better, right? You got to stop hugging these goddamn prospects. You really have to. If they're not going to make a major impact, and nobody has taken that mantle yet, by the way, nobody. We thought Vientos would after last year, but nobody has taken a mantle. Most of these, honest to God, any one of these guys are expendable in my opinion. Mauricio, Acuna, Beatty, Vientos. If a team wants them, trade
They got to
them.
be available.
But it's got to be for the player that obviously is going to help this team right now. You can't worry about next year. You can't worry about 2027. You can't worry about that. I know that's part of Stearns' job, but we're not telling you to deplete a farm system here. You got you in 2.5 years, you turned your farm system into a pile of crap, into a top 12 to 13 farm system in baseball.
I mean, if you look at some people's
Sure.
rankings, I mean, some people love some of the Mets prospects. So
Yeah.
it's all subjective at that point, and they've done a great job of building this farm system up, and it's ever growing. It's getting better and better. Whatever it was, Steve Cohen being willing to buy out contracts to get better prospect returns, and then some good drafts that the Mets have had, and some development at least at the minor league level. We haven't seen it work as well up here at the major league level, but we've seen spurts of these guys. So, and it sucks always being in this position. It's bittersweet because you want the team to get better, but then there's some guys that you followed or you wanted to like, and they just might not be here, especially if they haven't fully shown it. And these are all still young players, so yeah, maybe they might be great anywhere else. But if it results in us winning a World Series, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. It's something I know me and you, we've never seen. I don't know who in the comments was old enough to see them in win in '86, but if we're giving up your favorite prospect for a World Series, that's something you'll never forget. And
I will not cry a river. If the Mets would have won in 2015, you think anybody gave a shit about Michael Fulmer? No,
exactly.
Like that's the idea, right? And people still didn't care about Michael Fulmer. He never turned out to be what it is. Here's the problem, guys. there's about an 80% chance that Luis Acuna will probably be a failed prospect than a great player. Like that is a stronger possibility than him being, on the opposite end and being one of the better players. He's not his brother. He will never be his brother, right? I don't think he's ever going to be a power hitter that he's trying to be, because if you look at his swings, that's been his problem, right? I think he's going to be a 15 and less home run guy. And again, guys, we got to stop here. We have enough guys. You got 4 guys that played the same position. You can get rid of 2 of them and survive. You can. You're allowed to do that. That is a strong possibility. And you can't stop worrying about, well, Acuna is young. Yeah, that's nice. But you know what? If you don't make that trade, let's say the trade that we all want. Zach, who do you want? Anybody that's on the market or might be on the market, pick one guy.
Eugenio Suarez.
Eugenio Suarez. That's the trade. Who are you not trading?
Who am I not trading? Me personally,
besides the
pitcher, Jet Williams is probably the only one I'm not trading. And I know for a fact David Stearns isn't trading Carson Bench. But the thing is, it's not going to take that for someone like Eugenio Suarez because he's on an expiring contract and he's an older player. So it's tough to say. But let's think for anyone that's let's say Jarren Duran, for example. That's going to cost you something. He's a younger player under contract, under a cheaper contract. So we'll use that as an example. I mean, that's someone that's going to cost you some of your favorite prospects. It's going to cost you probably 1 or 2 of these guys that are MLB ready, that are at the MLB level. It's probably going to cost you one of the pitchers, and it might cost you another one of these top prospects, like a Clifford or a Gilbert or something along those lines. So you're looking at like someone along those lines. It's gonna cost you something, and if that makes this team better, it's for the better. Because we don't know what those prospects are going to do, and at the major league level, and we don't know if they're really going to have a spot here because this is a team that's they're pretty filled out their roster. Their shortstop positions taken care of. Second base or center field is taken care of for now with McNeil here. First base probably taken care of with Pete Alonso. Right field taken care of with Soto. Left field taken care of with Nimmo. So the Mets don't really have a ton of open positions. I guess third base is open, at least for this year. Third base or second or center field. Catcher, maybe, probably not. I think they're going to ride with Alvarez until the wheels really fall off of that. So there's not much available. Like the Mets don't have a ton of open positions for these prospects to fill. So you got to use them somehow. You can't just hold on to them and let them rot in the minors. If you're not going to make them a part of the major league team, you got to trade them for actual value with players that can contribute here.
Correct, and that's the thing, right? If you really put the Mets in a big picture, third base and center field is probably the biggest holes on this team, right? You could say McNeil is your second baseman for at least this year, and who knows after that. But again, the fact is, if you can listen, is anybody going to complain if the Mets trade whatever they need to get Jose Ramirez? No. Yeah, Zach.
I'll be right back.
Yeah, no problem. So that this is the idea of when, and I've been saying this throughout the entire 2025 offseason and through the season. My famous quote: if you're a Mets fan that wants to be a prospect hugger, that doesn't want to trade prospects to get better players here that can help you right now, and of course possibly in the future, if possible, if you get guys on the contract, look yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, do you really want to win? Or do you want to win as well as making your feelings, a little bit better because you hold on to prospects? Because Luis Acuna could be a very good player, but your holes on this team is third base in the infield. You got 4 guys. Pick one. The only guy that I've checked that is in the minor leagues is Luis Acuna. There's a reason why. And there could be many reasons. The Mets don't like his attitude. That has been well established throughout the season and early in spring training. They didn't like his attitude. They felt like he lost focus. He, did certain mistakes that, Mauricio's making those mistakes, but everybody believes that Mauricio has better talent. But they sent him back to the minors because, again, Was he helpful as a base runner? Yes. Was he helpful as a defensive replacement? Sure. But he did not hit at all, by the way. Your speed is very useless, and that's why he stopped playing, and Beatty and Vientos basically played more than him because of the fact that Acuna was not hitting. Unless he didn't walk, he struck out a ton. Your speed is useless if you're playing every day if you can't get on base. That was the biggest problem with Luis Acuna. Not saying that he can't get better hitting. He absolutely can. But in a situation where you need something a hell of a lot more now than what you need in 2027, you do it. It's just a fact. This is just what you got to do, and you have to be a little uncomfortable at the trade deadline. You got to make uncomfortable decisions and uncomfortable trades to make your team better. Right? Go back to 2015. And I go back to this because it's the only time the Mets made the deal needed, the big move. And it took to the final few seconds of the trade deadline in 2015, where all of a sudden almost spit the bit, but finally pulled the trigger on Yoenis Cespedes, giving up on #1 overall prospect in Michael Fulmer. Right? A lot of Met fans weren't excited about it. They were excited in the beginning, like right away, because the Mets actually made a big deal and almost people had a heart attack because they did something. I never forget this day. I was picking up my girlfriend from her job. I was in the car waiting for her to come out of her job. I was in Long Island. I never forget this. I was driving to Long Island. I stopped in front of my girlfriend's workplace, and I had the WFA on, and they said they made the trade. I'm like, holy shit. And as soon as my girlfriend got in the car, I'm like, we're buying tickets. Yoenis Cespedes is playing against the Nationals. And I think it was game 2 of the series. Bought tickets, and we went to the game. Like, that was a moment that does not happen for this organization enough and this fan base. Okay, well, Acuna played about 15 games. All right, let's relax about Acuna. Vientos had a great 2024, and I was all on board for Vientos being out third baseman. But he also sucks right now. For whatever reason, if he's actually not very good, and last year was a blip on the radar, or something in his mental state where he can't get out of his own way, the fact that he can't hit the fastball that he was crushing last year, and he swings at every slider on the outside corner or off the plate, that's a problem. That is the problem. So the issue with a lot of individuals and Met fans in general, I don't care about other fans around baseball, all right? The fact that we've watched for years the Dodgers make the big move. We saw it last year with the Dodgers. Who killed us in the playoffs last year? Tommy Edman. You know where they got him from? The St. Louis Cardinals, right? They didn't give up a ton. Those are the type of move, and you know what? They got what they needed at the deadline, right? The Phillies did it. Yes, we beat the Phillies. I understand that, but they went out there and got a really good reliever. Yes, he gave up a big home run to Francisco Lindor, but they went out and get the move. I'd rather make the move than question why didn't make the move, and then when we lose, everybody's going to question the deadline, right? Make the moves necessary to make your team better. If it doesn't work out and the players don't perform that you bring in here, you question the players. You don't question David Stearns. If he makes the moves that are necessary for this team and fills those holes, you're going to blame the players. That is the idea. You can't continue to hold on to these guys year after year. And then, again, we act like Lindor's 24 years old. We act like Brandon Nimmo isn't ready to break down at any moment in his career, right? We paid him as a center fielder. He went to left field within the year of signing that contract. Now, I believe Pete Alonso is going to be here long term, but he's on the wrong side of 30. We got guys that are right in their prime. You probably got the best 2 or 3 years, maybe, of those guys that I just mentioned. You can't have these contracts and let them go to waste. And then when Lindor, Alonso, Nimmo are 34, 35 years old, and Soto is now around 29, 30 years old, and he's technically in the middle of his prime, what are you going to do with those bad contracts? Nobody's going to want them. So that's the point. You're not benching those guys to play the young players. It's just not going to happen. You got to win within the next 2 or 3 years where they're all in their prime right now. You can't waste those years. You can't. Look at the Phillies. The Phillies made signed these players that they had, that they signed Bryce Harper, they signed Wheeler, they signed Turner, but they gave contracts to other guys that were in their organization. They made the moves necessary. And you know what the Philly fans are talking about right now? That this might be probably a final year before they start breaking up this core. Because guys are getting older. They're consistently injured. Like that is the problem. You don't want to end up like the Phillies, where you've been in the playoffs the last couple of seasons. You've been at the highest peak except winning the World Series. And each year, guys are getting older. And each year, you're getting closer and closer out of the playoffs. Where they were World Series, NLCS, NLDS. You know what's next? Wild card. And this is where you don't want to be. You don't want to be where you have guys that are consistently injured. And let's be honest, guys, Nimmo is consistently injured. Right now, he's in the hottest month of his season, but he did this last year right before the All-Star break. He was red hot, and then he was cold for the final 3 months of the season. Right? Pete Alonso never really got started last year. Had an okay season in his terms, but overall, it was Vientos and Lindor. When it comes to other teams, I always put the Phillies in that spectrum because they signed a lot of long-term deals. They basically have a 4 to 5 year window that they're probably on year 5 right now of what they're trying to do with that core. And they're on the verge of possibly breaking it up after this year if they don't win. Like, that's been the conversation of Philly sports talk radio. And yes, you guys know, I listen to a lot of sports talk radio around the country, especially when the Mets are playing those teams. That has been the talk of Phillies baseball talk on their radio station. So you don't want to fall into that category where in the next 2 years, 2 to 3 years, where I think this window of opportunity with this core is the time to win a World Series, at least with this core. You got to make it happen at some point, or try everything you can to put better players or put a better roster around these guys. Because they haven't done it. They didn't do it in 2022. They didn't do it in 2024. When are you going to do it? These are the best years of their career. How many more years are we going to have MVP Lindor? How many more years are we going to have great years of Alonso? 2 or 3 before these guys start breaking down? Nimmo's breaking down already, and he's just 30, 31. And Zach, I was just going over the fact that people are still complaining about, trading prospects and, not wanting to trade certain guys. And I understand that every Mets fan has favorite prospects, right? We all have different opinions on our prospects, but if it gets you the guys that you need to win now,
doesn't matter. You
can bite the bullet, all right? Because if it wins you a championship, nobody gives a shit. Like, nobody cares. It really doesn't, Zach. And I just wonder, I keep on questioning, like Met fans, look yourself in the mirror. This team has not won since 1986. Me and Zach weren't born yet, right? There's a lot of you in the chat that might have been, or some of you might have been very young when they won. We're approaching 40 years here for the New York Mets winning the World Series. We've been in 2 over the last 25 years. This is a problem. This is how you finally get over that hump. And if you don't do what's necessary, then why even bother to do anything? You don't give Juan Soto $765 million. You don't give Nimmo a massive contract, a broken down center fielder, just to keep him around. You trade for Lindor and give him a contract. And then and then most likely you're going to give Pete Alonso a contract. You don't sign those 4 guys long term to wait until they're 36 years old and try to figure it out. It just doesn't work, Zach.
No, yeah, and especially in a year where a lot of teams are, like the Dodgers, they've been pretty banged up. I mean, the Phillies, they're banged up, and they're good and they're leading the NL East by a game and a half now. we've bested them for the most part this season. You know, the Braves are pretty much out of it. They've been out of it for a while. So with teams like that out of it, you got to take advantage. You got to take a swing for the fences. And you know, I don't think every year warrants selling a ton of prospects to make a big move, but some do, and I think this is that year. You know, I think last year was definitely not that year because we didn't know what the team was. We didn't know if they would make the playoffs come the trade deadline. We really didn't. You know, I took them to the last day of the season to make the playoffs. So, you know, that wasn't a year where you're going to go all in. You know, but 2022, I think the argument was there, but there wasn't really a lot available that trade deadline. So I don't fault Epler, and plus it was Billy Epler. You know, whatever.
Correct.
So I think there's time. There's a point in time to do it, and I think this year's that time. You know, I'm excited to see what Stearns does because we haven't seen him really swing for the fences as a GM or president of baseball operations yet. But with the ability to eat a ton of money with Steve Cohen's checkbook and the prospect to back it up and make some moves, I'm excited to see what he does. I really am.
Yeah, and Explosive saying that he looks back last year thinking that the Mets should have went all in. It's kind of hard because they were kind of a fringe wild card team, and it was kind of like at any moment. Again, you just said it, Zach. They made the playoffs the last game of the year. It was very likely that they could have not made the playoffs last year on the last game of the season. So I'm not going to agree with Explosive there when it comes to going all in, even though, listen, I'm the type go all in, do what you got to do to win a World Series. I don't think you're doing your job if you don't do that. But I understand why Stearns didn't. I wasn't happy about it, obviously, but I understand why he did it. First year as the president of baseball ops, evaluating the farm system that he, obviously probably did his homework on, but still wants to see how these guys develop. Understandable. But like you just said, Zach, like there's more and more Met fans realizing that this is probably the year, right? There is no guarantee that Brandon Nimmo is going to be healthy after this year. We don't know that, right? We got Juan Soto, we got Lindor. There is a possibility. I know people don't want to talk about this, but there is a possibility Pete Alonso might not be on this team. There might be somebody that gives them a crazy contract.
Yeah.
And we see it all the time in baseball where nobody's expecting somebody to get 7 or 8 years and they just give it to them for whatever reason. That could happen. If the Mets, and we all know there's no way the Mets are probably going to give him 7 or 8 years, there might be a team out there that might be desperate enough saying, that's the bat we're missing. Mm-hmm. And that's it. You get an 8-year deal and Pete Alonso's off to wherever land in Major League Baseball. And now the Mets are looking for a first baseman now. So this is where you're a top 5 team in baseball. That means you are one of the top contenders to win a World Series. Again, that doesn't always happen, obviously, but when you're a top 5 team in baseball, just like they were in 2022 when they half-assed that deadline, you got to do something. You got to do what you need to do. And I'm not worried when it comes to if this team's making the playoffs. It's just a matter of what we're going to do when we get there. But we all have our opinions. We all have our reasonings for our prospects and what trades we want and what guys we want on this team. But it is ultimately up to David Stearns. And look, I'm giving him the leadway and a little bit of, I'm backing off a little bit because he hasn't had the money of Steve Cohen with the prospects. He only had a low budget team in Milwaukee with prospects, and he only had a limited amount of things he could have done there. He has unlimited assets in the form of prospects and money to do whatever he needs to do. So this is his opportunity here, and we'll see. Again, I don't trust David Stearns when it comes to a deadline and doing the right thing and making big moves, but I am also going to wait and see because he hasn't had the opportunity to do it yet. So I'm not going to kill him. Now, I will kill him on August 1st if he doesn't do it, but we will see. So, Zach, going into this Baltimore series, right? Again, I talked about we actually see pitchers that we know that are going to be pitching in this series, which is a good sign, right? 4-2 homestand, that's great, right? The offense finally figured things out, we hope. And this is hopefully going to be a consistent, 5 to 6 runs per game average for this offense where they should be, because over the last month they were scoring less than 4. And that's bad. That's terrible. You can't do that. You're not going to win a lot of ball games. I don't care who your pitching staff is if you're going to score less than 4 runs. And I think they finally got over that hill of, that little area of what we've seen of terrible baseball for almost a month. I think they're over that hump. What do you want to see against the Baltimore Orioles that have a really down season this year? And we do got Holmes, we do got Peterson, possibly Kodai Senga in Game 3.
So I see the offense continue to produce. I think these pitchers, we have some of our best starters going up against this team. I think they can do a good job of keeping their bats at bay. It's just not only pouncing on a team like the Orioles that is down, that they're not playing well, but continuing this nice stretch with the bats, and also just continuing to beating up on some bad pitchers, because the Orioles really don't have much in terms of pitchers. So just keeping that going into the All-Star break, where you can get or in the Royal Series and the All-Star break, where you can get a week off and just get healthy, because a lot of these guys are banged up. So just keeping it moving. 5-6 runs a game, that'd be nice, and escaping this road trip healthy is key.
Yeah, and try to get to the All-Star break. We're hobbling right now with some crutches, as we are, trying to desperately get through these last 6 games to get to the All-Star break. And hopefully we have a good homestand, right? It would be, I would take a 4-2 road trip. To be quite honest with you, I know Baltimore struggled this year. Kansas City is having a down season as well, and where they were expected to take a next step forward. But it's a team with a lot of good young talent that that can surprise you, and that can beat you up if you don't play your game. And again, I think if the Mets limit their mistakes, I think they'll win. And I talked about this all season. When the Mets lose, they make a ton of stupid little mistakes. And they've done that over the last month prior to these last 2 series. They made a ton of mental and ton of silly little mistakes that cost them games. And just limit the mistakes. When you play bad teams, and Baltimore's a bad team right now, with the Royals, they're kind of an average team right now. If you limit the mistakes or make no mistakes in that series, there's a pretty good chance you're going to win that series. So let's hope that happens. We got the pitchers that we actually know and want on the mound for the New York Mets. We hopefully see Senga back. Hopefully see Minaya back before the All-Star break. And we're getting healthier by the day. And by the way, Jesse Winker's coming back very, very soon. I think he's going to be here in the Baltimore series as well, which might be very crucial considering that Marte might go on the IL. Yeah. Because that didn't look good yesterday.
It did not look good.
Yeah, so Zach, just final thoughts overall for the New York Mets and, these last couple of games heading into the All-Star break before we head out.
Let's play some clean baseball. No mistakes, get through, just continue what they did with the runners in scoring position, runners on the bases, get base hits, tack some runs against these teams, and escape with a winning record here. 4-2, 2-1 against each team. I'm happy with, again, this All-Star break. Stay healthy and just continue to get healthy, with a week off,
Yep. And that's the idea, guys. So the Mets are 52-39, second place, game and a half out of first place. And again, well within playoff distance and striking distance to make the playoffs. So a couple of weeks until the deadline, a week of games before the All-Star break. And hopefully the Mets come out of this with a winning record. And we will talk to you next time, guys. Thank you for tuning in to Mets Talk Live right here on the channel and on X. Have a good night, guys. Let's go Mets. Enjoy the rest of the Mets off day. And we'll see you tomorrow for the pregame show, guys. Have a good night.
Let's go, Mets.
Meet the Mets. Meet the Mets. Step right up and greet the Mets. Bring your kitty.